You've had Wendy's Nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, and garlic parmesan, and of course, the hot versions of all of those. This might be a hot garlic parm kind of day. Or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. I dare you. Only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. That is 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you have never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. It is the first round of the college football playoff. We have never seen games like this before. On-campus games, single elimination tournament to determine national champion in major college football. Ari, it's electric.
to borrow my word, it was a very weird weekend this weekend, Andy. I missed you.
I missed you too. I felt like we didn't even talk.
Yeah. It was crazy. I went to a child casino. I went and I
You mean an arcade?
Yeah, it's a child casino.
You sent me this, by the way, and said we have to talk about how these are casinos. And I thought about when we were on a cruise and my wife was playing the prize game in the arcade with our kids. And then I was like, if we go downstairs, you can play that same game and win cash. Because she's actually really good at it. The one where it pushes you push the thing in and it pushes the thing out. And so she won like $200 cash, like third try.
I walk into this place because I haven't been to an arcade in a long time. And my daughter now is old enough to do these types of things and enjoy it. They've got decorative carpet. There are no windows. There are no clocks. There are ATMs everywhere. And by ATMs, I mean like the recharge on the game card situation.
Oh, yeah.
They're pumping oxygen 100% into this place. I'm looking up and I'm seeing it. They got
He's like, I'm home.
Cashier's cage where you can take your tickets and exchange them for cheap gifts. $14 beers, slot machines everywhere. They're all lit up. Like this is, and I was just like thinking, like, I'm $250 deep trying to get a stuffed animal. Like I should be over in Choctaw right now, playing the slots myself. But all it is it's an indoctrination and a conditioning for children to start gambling. That's all it is. It's the same thing.
Well, I'm glad you figured that out.
Is it not the same exact thing?
Oh, it's 100% the same thing. I was just there to play air hockey. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah. we got a lot to talk about today, Ari, because we're going to be picking these games, which, again, we've never seen this before. I heard Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback, talking about it, and he's like, look, when we boil it down, it's just a game, and it's at our stadium. There's another team coming in, and he's right. But then you think about, oh, man, the stakes of these things are super high. It is going to be so much fun, but there's more going on in the sport than just the college football playoff. Everybody else is trying to deal with the transfer portal. There's one transfer portal story that very much hits the college football playoff. But before we talk about the transfer portal, I do want to talk about news that just broke. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo reported this morning. Mike Norvell is going to restructure his contract, according to Ross, and give $4.5 million back to Florida State of his $10 million salary.
So, like, this just happened, right? So we're trying to
this just and this digest. Is not over a course of years. This is this year.
So we're not trying to we're still trying to digest this. Sorry, we haven't podcasted since Thursday, so my mouth is
you're a little rusty. Yeah,
I need to get back into the flow of things here. Does this feel Harbaugh-y to you?
It feels a little Harbaugh-y, but the thing is, like, Harbaugh did it because they were going to fire him otherwise. And that's the part that, if we go back to after the 2020 season when Jim Harbaugh got his contract restructured, he basically got his pay cut in half. Michigan would have owed him, I think, $8 million in buyout money, and they were prepared to pay it. And basically they went in and said, we're going to either cut your salary in half or we're going to fire you. Your choice. Tell us what you'd like to do. This is not that, because Florida State has no leverage in this situation. Like, they would owe Mike Norvell $70 million if they fired him. But Mike Norvell probably is sitting here going, they gave me a raise to $10 million a year last year. I certainly didn't earn that with my performance last year. So perhaps I can help because I'm financially taken care of here. So let's give it, because remember, revenue sharing is coming. So that $4.5 million probably goes straight to football player money, which we don't know exactly how much Florida State will contribute in its rev share. We do know how much North Carolina will, because we saw it in the Bill Belichick contract that North Carolina is going to contribute $13 million toward football player salaries, essentially. So Florida State, we can assume, is going to be near that or maybe above it.
Here's the thing that we need to explain, though. So this is the thing, right? We are talking about and theorizing about the future of coaches' salaries just in general in this new world, right, Andy? Like, if you are doing revenue share with a program, rather allocate more money to the head coach's salary or to the salary pool of the players. I don't know if we're allowed to say salary pool, but whatever, the money pool.
We don't work for the schools or the NCAA. I don't give a crap what they think. It is the salary pool.
What do we call that? The salary pool? Okay.
I'm calling it the salary pool because that's what it is.
I love that. Well, we don't have to say what it's not. It just, let's call it what it is. But is this $4.5 million extra that Florida State's going to have, or are they just going to allocate it from a different spot? Like, that's the thing. It's like there's a certain cap here of how much is there. It's not just like every coach in America can give a piece of their salary back and then they have more money to spend. It just
he may be saving people's jobs in the athletic department by doing this.
Okay.
Because that money's got to come from somewhere.
But people have to understand that a coach doesn't have the power to create additional funds, right? Like, maybe in the future, if a program decides not to max out what they contribute to that salary pool, a coach could say, hey, take some out of my salary and put more into the salary pool.
And I think they will.
But once you get to a certain point, it's not like an unlimited amount of untapped money that the coach can just say, here's my entire salary, go buy me players. Like, that's not how it works.
Correct. So, yeah, because Sailor Joe in the chat asked to explain revenue sharing. And so basically the revenue sharing that they're planning to do, which again, the House versus the NCAA settlement has to be approved by the court still. We think it's going to be. It's been preliminarily approved. So it's capped according to the schools, which were the conferences were part of the settlement. So it's capped at 20% of the average power conference school's athletic department revenue per year. So right now, this year, it's $22.5 million. The way it's written, $2.5 million of that has to be used toward new scholarships because they changed the roster caps and all that and how many scholarships are available. So essentially, you can fund up to $20 million that will go toward player salaries.
So if Bill
that's
Belichick's
across all sports,
I don't want to get paid at all. You guys are already committing $13 million to revenue share. Take my salary and get it to 20. Does he have the ability to do that?
He does. He could do that. Yeah. And so Brian Kelly's doing this too, by the way. He's going to match up to $1 million in donations to LSU's athletic department. So with his own money, so that will get LSU $2 more million essentially. And the reason is like,
and this is different though, Andy, because a coach couldn't donate to an NIL fund.
No. Mm-mm. And he's not asking them to donate to NIL. He's asking them to donate to the athletic department. So, and that is the difference, because now it comes out of the same pot. And the other thing to think about is, let's say you are the average power conference athletic department and you make $100 million or $110 million in revenue. To suddenly have to earmark 20% of your budget for something that you didn't earmark it for the year before is an incredibly difficult. I mean, imagine you're running a business and suddenly somebody tells you your costs have increased 20%. Like, you would have to cut people. You would have to do a lot of pretty drastic things. So that's why they're doing these things.
Our athletic department's going to say, we will donate X number of percent to the 20 million. And that gets us to 11 million a year in revenue sharing that we're able to do. But here is a person, or here's a place that you can donate, and we will give 100% of your donations to that pot. So we're going to do, so it's kind of like a telethon almost. Like,
you can earmark your donation if you're a donor to a department. Like, you can say, I want this to go toward a softball stadium, or I want this to go toward player revenue share for football. Like you can do it. They don't have to accept that, but you also don't have to give it if they don't follow your wishes.
But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that we're nowhere near the burden of financial culpability being off of the fans' shoulders. Like there's still going to be a fan element to this in terms of where you're donating matters. And
but now they can use money from the TV contract. They can use money from their ticket sales.
But there's going to be like campaigns to raise as much money as possible from fans directly in order to add to or bolster the revenue sharing budget that the school has already outlined.
Yeah, it's going to be the same. It's the same stuff they always did when they wanted to put waterfalls in the locker room, except now they can pay the players.
Yeah. But I wonder too, if like we're still going to get, and I'm sure we will, coaching rants of like, well, if our fans donated more, then we would, you know what I mean? Like that same crap.
Yeah, they got to be careful. This is a very savvy move by Norvell. So Florida State's official release just came out on this. And he's, according to the quote in the release, he's the one who brought it to Florida State's. He's the one who said, let's try this. And I think it's pretty smart because obviously that fan base was really mad at him because they sucked this year. And he had just gotten this massive raise and this ironclad contract that they couldn't get out of. And this is a way to say, hey, look, I get it. I'm gonna try to make this better. So I think it's pretty smart. Like I realize I'm nowhere near this level of salary, Ari. But I could not give almost half my salary to anybody and continue on like nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're in the wrong business, but
yeah.
I did that recently, but I gave it to the IRS instead.
So that is to stay out of jail, though. That's different.
Yeah, that was we got a love letter in the mail about taxes from 2 years ago that we didn't pay on accident or something, and it was just the worst week of my life. But here we are. We're alive. We're well. We didn't have to. We had to sell a few cards, but we're back in business. So anyway, yeah. I mean, I get it. I get why you would do that, especially if you're making an abundance. The amount of money that he was making, and like it'd be weird like if On3 came to you and was like, hey, we're gonna give you this ironclad deal, we're gonna go all in on you, you're our guy, and then like the show just had 100 views like the next year, like you would feel like
I would feel awful. So, I would feel like I'd feel like I was stealing. So I understand where he's coming from on this, and look, let's be real here, he's being well taken care of still. He's got plenty of money, but this is a pretty big gesture. This is not like because the Mike Gundy Oklahoma State thing, which is a similar situation, like they had to kind of fight it out in the media first. Like it's a standoff. This was not that. This was, we just, dropped this in our lap Monday morning and here we are talking about it. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see if that helps Florida State in terms of the kind of players they get and what the results are. Obviously, they've revamped their coaching staff, so that was but a very interesting move and one that I don't think will be the last. I think we're seeing a correction here. Coaches' salaries are going to go down as player salaries go up because good players just as important as good coaches, and in some cases more important. Let us talk transfer portal, Ari. Before we get to the one that is crazy, let's talk about some of the more routine transfer portal moves. A couple quarterbacks changing locations. Jackson Arnold. We talked about this the other day. Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. We said, what is Auburn looking for? Who's the ideal person? Well, they have decided it's Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold joins Auburn's QB room. And Ari, this is an interesting one because we keep talking about we haven't seen Jackson Arnold, what he really can do because of their offensive line situation, their receiver situation. He now enters a program where they've got some really good young receivers.
Oh, yeah. I love it. You know what? I think, too, it's just like I felt like Oklahoma gave up on him too fast. And I know that they put him back into the starting lineup at the end of the year, but I felt bizarre to me. And you lived through that reaction with me real time. Like, you knew that felt weird for me anyway. And I understand, and we talked through it a lot, that Oklahoma was in a position where they didn't have an offensive line and they didn't have explosive playmakers, and you wanted to do the best that you could to put somebody in a position who can escape pressure and create in a different way that Jackson Arnold might not be as good at, right? So I guess they're part of it too. It's like, I don't even know if I'm necessarily blaming Brent Venables for putting his team in the best position to try to win a football game. But like, if this kid has the ceiling that we think he does, it's a really crappy way to lose out on it. Like, if Oklahoma fans have to watch him go be awesome at Auburn, like, that's just going to suck for them. And I'm going to feel for them, because it's not that the quarterback was ever not good. It was that the offensive staff did a poor job of situating the talent on the offensive side of the football to allow him to flourish. And then he goes to a place that has Cam Coleman, and then it's just awesome. Like, that's on the table. That said,
I think Oklahoma has a plan for quarterback, though.
Yeah, they do have a plan.
This is
I think it's
happening in a vacuum.
No, but I'm just saying, like, if Jackson Arnold and the discourse around him was that he's one of the best high school football recruits at the quarterback position of the last 5 years when he was in high school. He's from a few, 100 miles south. He was the poster boy for who was going to be the player that led Oklahoma into the new frontier. And I know that might rhyme with somebody who could be on their way, but like, that to me is just kind of tough, especially if he goes to Auburn is awesome. Now that there's a flip side of this too, which is Brent Venables was correct in his assessment early on in the season, and they had to make a change, and the turnovers were something that Oklahoma could not overcome, and that the turnovers were more predicated on Arnold's inability to protect the football than it was being a deer in the headlights based on a bad offensive line. And then Jackson Arnold goes to Auburn, a place that's been tortured by turnover-prone quarterbacks, continues those ways, and then Auburn gets beaten in SEC games they shouldn't lose again next year because they had 3 turnovers from the quarterback position that were unforced or bad. I don't know which way this is going to go, but I like the move to go take a swing at it, because like, Auburn knows better than anybody how much a transcendent quarterback can change your dynamic as a program. Right now, I'm not calling Jackson Arnold Cam Newton by
but there was a former Auburn quarterback talking about a freshman taking his number earlier this weekend. But yes, Cam Newton, you saw what he could do. And like, when he had his one season at Auburn.
The comparison though is that they have a few guys at Auburn now that could be the guy, and no one, I don't think, is ever going to do what Cam Newton did ever again, which was carry a team on his own shoulders by himself to a national title. I don't think the sports works that way anymore.
Nick Fairley helped a little. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what was it like? What would you assign the percentage of?
Well, they did have to play defense, and Cam was not Travis Hunter. He didn't play defense, so Nick Fairley was very helpful. But yes, Cam Newton dragged an offense that, now rest in peace, Philip Lessenkirchen, because he would have played in the NFL for a long time. But the rest of Auburn's starting offense that year combined for 1 NFL start, other than Cam Newton.
You could say that, and this is an off-season conversation, but a little preview to whatever that is, that Cam Newton's percentage of responsibility for that national championship was the highest in college football history, right? In terms of like how much one player meant to a run.
Yes. And certainly in the modern era.
Yeah. And I don't know that could ever happen again. Maybe now that the
curve is
talent's all spreading out. Like, that certainly could never happen 3 years ago. So, so I think that the thing that I love about the transfer portal is that every year we get these stories, these situations that are just interesting. They're just downright interesting. Like, and we're going to be talking about the Auburn quarterback battle or the Auburn quarterback situation from now until next August, and it's going to be awesome. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Nick Terry said Vince Young might have something to say about that, but still, I think that Texas team was.
There were a lot more NFL players on that Texas team. Yeah, that Texas team actually was pretty loaded. I don't think people, because that was the only way you're going to beat that USC team, as good as Vince was.
And that comment isn't to nag other great quarterbacks. Yeah, it's to say that what he did makes him pretty like impossible to leave out of the greatest college football player conversation.
So
like that
one more traditional quarterback portal move, and then we'll talk about the weird one that leads into our first game pick because it's very relevant. Miller Moss, USC quarterback, headed to Louisville. There was talk that some of the USC skill players who entered the portal would be following Miller Moss, but I'll be curious to see if they do. Deuce Robinson was at Arizona State over the weekend, the receiver.
Electric.
And Kenny Dillingham, introducing the man to Sam Levitt and saying, look, hey, we're in the playoff. You sure you want to look elsewhere? You want to come home? I think that's a really enticing one, but Miller Moss might have a little Pied Piper effect to Louisville. So let's keep an eye on that one. But Ari, before we talk about the next one, because it's a strange one and it leads into our first game pick, I want to let everybody know this episode of Andy and Ari on 3 is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. You visit betterhelp.com/Andy and Ari to get 10% off your first month. And I'm telling you right now, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody about anything, give it a try. It helps. I've done it before. Shout out Dr. Matt. My guy actually has a sports psychology background, and it really helped because he kind of speaks the same language I do based on the people I talk to in my job, and it allows me to kind of unload some stuff and figure out how to deal with some things that happened a long time ago. Like I'll give you a prime example. Saturday was the 18th anniversary of my mom's passing. I have not handled that well through the years. Talking to somebody definitely helped me handle it better. So if you've got something like that that's weighing you down, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp.com/Andy and Ari, 10% off your first month. BetterHelp.com/Andy and Ari. All right, guys. Ari, we have a very interesting transfer portal story that feeds into the playoff that I think is something that coaches, players are going to have to figure out, because I don't think the schools and the NCAA are going to be able to figure it out. I don't think there's a solution that is readily available for them. And I think coaches and players are just going to have to figure out how they're going to handle this stuff. So Beau Pribula, the backup quarterback for Penn State, is entering the transfer portal. He posted a note on Instagram on Sunday night thanking the Penn State community for everything and saying this was an incredibly difficult decision, but he's leaving now. Like, he is not playing for Penn State against SMU, which is very interesting because it's not like Beau Pribula was a backup who never played. He had a role. They would bring him in several plays a game. The Wisconsin game, he played the entire second half, led them to a win.
Mm-hmm.
Ari, this is an odd situation, and made more odd by the fact that SMU, which is Penn State's opponent in the first round on Saturday, has the same situation with their backup quarterback, Preston Stone, their former starter, in the portal. But Preston Stone is playing. Like, if Kevin Jennings goes down, Preston Stone goes in the game.
Yeah, this situation gave me PTSD, Andy, because I made one of the biggest mistakes of my career at this time last year around a situation that was like this. And if you go back and remember, Texas's quarterback Malik Murphy entered the portal around the same time before the playoff. Now, that wasn't a 12-teamer, but it was a 4-teamer. And I thought when he went in the portal that he was done and not playing for Texas. And that was which triggered me to form opinions about Steve Sarkisian's philosophy on this, because there are coaches out there, and I believe James Franklin is one of them, that is, if you're in the portal, you're not on the team, right? Like, isn't that like a thing that coaches have said?
Which I felt like was a perfectly reasonable way to handle it in the past. But that was a situation where you might be playing in a bowl game that wasn't for anything. Like, now it's a different situation because you need that depth. Like, it helps your team and it hurts your team if that person leaves. And
so for the time being, last year, Andy, I thought that Malik Murphy wasn't going to play with Texas because of that policy. And I thought it was stupid because Malik Murphy stepped in for an injured Quinn Ewers for multiple games last year, helped Texas get to the playoff, and was an important piece to Texas's team because, as you know, Quinn Ewers has a propensity to get injured. Right. And I was like, Texas is really going to go into the 14 playoff without their backup quarterback because of the transfer portal and a stupid Steve Sarkisian thought that if you're in the portal. And then it turned out that Steve Sarkisian came out and said, Malik Murphy's an integral part of our team. He means a lot to me. He's a perfect, tremendous young man. We want him a part of the run, and he played. So, like, I was wrong for thinking that, like Steve Sarkisian, like, shot himself in the foot because he didn't.
Well, and he evolved his thinking on it because he had to.
Because you have to. Yeah. Because here's the deal. In the spring, when a person leaves in the portal, you don't need them. But, like, I think you could make a reasonable case that Penn State needs Beau Pribula during this run. If Drew Aller were to get hurt, or if they want to have an extra package, although Tyler Warren is somebody that they've also used in the Wildcat, for lack of a better term, take direct snap, throw, whatever. You know, he's done a lot of stuff. You want your backup quarterback that you've gone to multiple times this year on your team, and it's not just 2 games now. It's 4, potentially.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the reason for him leaving before the run is, but it gets very muddy because you have to acknowledge that in the transfer portal world, and even just college football in general and high school football recruiting, quarterback dominoes are important. If a spot opens and somebody takes that spot, then that opens another spot. You want to be available to get your rightful or preferred landing spot. That said, you can still do it while playing. So I don't understand what's going on here. So
I want to hear James Franklin talk about this, because when I saw it initially, I had a started to form a take, and I'm like, I think I need to be careful on this one
a year ago
because
yeah,
because I don't want to assign blame before we know exactly what happened. Because if James Franklin said, if you're in the portal, you're not on the team, that's a different story. If James Franklin said, we'll support you any way we can, please keep playing, and then Beau Pribula said, no, I'm not going to, that's a different story entirely as well. As you pointed out about the dominoes, there are more quarterback spots open now than there will be. Like, we think Penn State's going to be favored in this game. If they win this game, they'll be favored in the next one. So we're talking about a long time. They have 3.5 more weeks. That's a lot of spots that'll get filled. That said, pointing out again, the backup quarterback on the other team in this game, Preston Stone, is in the same boat, and he's playing. So you take from that what you will. And maybe that Preston Stone already knows where he's going. That may have already been decided. But it's a very interesting situation, because I want to know who said what when and how the decision was made before I render a judgment on this thing, because I don't want to come off blazing on Pribula or on James Franklin if I don't know exactly where they stood on this thing.
Yeah, and it's a very easy thing to go, well, Beau Pribula is a terrible teammate, but it's like, the thing that is frustrating about situations like this is that there is a solution in the middle, which is Beau Pribula goes into the portal,
right,
does what he needs to do, finds his team, does not remove himself from the thick of the quarterback domino derby, and still plays. So, like, it's not like a choose your adventure situation. There is a route in an avenue.
There's a grown up way to handle this, which we're watching SMU do it. We're watching Arizona State do it right now. Kenny Dillingham is like quote tweeting his players' portal announcements saying, "We love this guy. He's a great teammate. You're going to love him on your team, but also he's going to stay with us through the play." Like, you can do that. And I kind of turned on that last year when we had Eli Drinkwitz on the show before the Cotton Bowl. And he was explaining why, instead of just saying, if you're in the portal and you're not on the team, he said, no, you're absolutely still on the team. You helped us get here. You make sure it's not a distraction, and we'll support you any way we can, but we want you to be with us through the end of the season. And I think that's a really grown-up way of handling it. And if you're in the playoff, it's absolutely the way you should handle it, because you need the depth.
Yeah. And James Franklin, I should add, if it were, hey, if you're in the portal, you're not on the team, is only hurting his own chances. So like I think that would be a
but
poor
I'm not
coaching
sure.
move.
I just let's see what he says about that, because
it can't be that, because why would a coach make his team worse on purpose?
Right. Now, let's also, since we're talking about dominoes falling, let's talk about what this also probably means if Beau Pribula is entering the transfer portal. It probably means the starting job at Penn State is not open next year. I don't think that means they're taking a portal quarterback. That seems a strong indication that Drew Aller comes back next year.
Yeah. Which is nuts, because there was a time where it seemed like he might be a first rounder this year, right?
Oh, like, I think that time is right now. I think the way he played in the Oregon game
now.
I mean, think about this. You look at all the quarterbacks who are going to be in the draft next year. They're going to be
right.
There's a lot of it's not a deep draft at all.
I said a weak draft.
Yeah, it's definitely a weak draft. And there's several quarterback needy teams. There's multiple teams that are probably going to want to take a first round QB. Who do you trust as a QB in the first round? Maybe Shedeur Sanders? Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck? I'm not taking either of those guys in the first round.
Yeah. And quarterbacks will go in the first round because they have to take quarterbacks in the first round, right? Has there ever been an NFL draft where they're like, we don't like anybody, we're just going to wait, and then no quarterbacks got taken in the first round at all?
There's been some where they went a while without taking one, but not in this era. This era, they're going to take quarterbacks. You saw it with Penix going in the top 10 last year to not even start. They're going to take quarterbacks if they feel like they want one. So Aller, but here's the thing,
it
Ari.
also brings up a secondary discussion, which I don't know if we're going to get into, but there have been rumors of what's going to happen with Quinn Ewers this year too. Of is he ready to go?
We can talk about that when we get to the Texas Clemson game.
Okay,
but Aller, before we pick this Penn State SMU game, which is now suddenly way more interesting. Aller, imagine him playing the way he did against Oregon for an entire season. That's maybe the first guy off the board, right?
Yes. Because he was very and he's doing it too without any help from a skill position standpoint. They've got
other than Tyler Warren, yeah,
but I'm saying there's no Cam Coleman on the outside. There's no Ryan Williams. There's no Jeremiah Smith.
No,
he was super mobile. You know what it kind of reminded me of a little bit? And I don't know if this is going to sound insane to you, but for a quarterback, because Drew Aller didn't run much this year, right?
Right.
You know when CJ Stroud played against Georgia in 2022, and it was just kind of the best quarterback performance that Ohio State had seen in years. And it was where the hell did that come from? And then that game actually turned into be the reason and the thing that people point to of you should have seen it right there of why he's really good in the NFL. I'm wondering if that, and I'm not saying styles and everything, but I wonder if Drew Aller's performance against Oregon was that hey guys, look a little closer at this, because this tape here shows what he could be.
Yeah.
But then that to me wouldn't signal going back.
But he may want to put a whole year of that on tape.
But you don't need a whole year of that on tape.
I know, but listen, he may like it. This is a different era, Ari.
No, I know. I mean, he's getting paid out there too. So I mean, I'm not saying that it's dumb. I'm just saying, if that is what he plays in the first round, I don't know that he has much to gain going back from a draft perspective, particularly in a year where there isn't a ton of competition at the position. He could play himself into a top. If Drew Aller plays really well for the next 2 or 3 games, he is a top 10 pick, right?
This is true.
So,
all right,
I don't know what that means.
Let's talk about his next game.
Okay.
Let's talk about his next game. Penn State SMU. Penn State is an 8.5-point favorite. This is a really fascinating game, Ari, because I think I go back to the ACC championship game. What SMU did early on in that game, where they dug themselves a massive hole. they fumble early. Clemson cashes it in for a TD. They had trouble stopping Clemson early. They end up coming back, and they end up losing on a walk-off field goal. If you dig a hole like that against Penn State, Ari, I think you lose. I think Penn State it makes it like the Illinois game, essentially. Like they'll just beat you 24-7 if you do that.
Yeah. Well, also, like there's a lot here to unpack. One is, as you guys know, I'm a very big proponent of the Penn State atmosphere, and it's going to be like 12 degrees out there. Like SMU is walking into, like, there's nothing like that in the ACC, right? Like, am I forgetting any? Is there a
Clemson's
single
the closest thing, but they didn't play in it.
Yeah. So they're walking into, because like in the SEC, it's like, oh, wow, it's going to be loud. And it's like, yeah, well, it's loud every week.
Yeah, Clemson and Virginia Tech, but they didn't play in either place this year.
And like, I always get like, oh, yeah, okay, the crowd's loud, whatever. Like, but like, this is a different type of loud for SMU, especially considering the fact that they're only 1 year into a power league to begin with. And that league isn't really known for, I mean, Virginia Tech too, like, but isn't really known for imposing crowds. And the temperature and all that too. And it gets a little chilly here in Dallas, but nothing like that. But also too, it's like, did SMU work out the yips?
That's the thing, because if they come in playing the way they did in the second half of that ACC championship game, this is going to be a really competitive game. This is going to be a lot of fun. They cannot start slow like they did in the ACC championship game, because Penn State is one of those teams that can just sit on you. And you got to make Penn State work. And you saw Oregon make Penn State work, and you saw Ohio State make Penn State work. And I think if you do that, you have a good chance of winning this game.
Yeah. Yeah. 8.5 is a lot of points, and it just kind of depends on which way you think this is headed. And what I saw from Penn State, like, I think I'm liking this side of it. What I saw against Oregon was a different gear. And if they can build off of that and play that way at home, like, I do like their odds of winning by 10. And that doesn't mean that SMU isn't competitive, but, you know, this could also be a blowout, right? Like, I don't know.
Okay. And I'm not, again, we're not wishing injury on anybody, but we just spent 10 minutes talking about this, and we're kind of remiss if we don't. What if something happens to Drew Aller? What do you do if you're Penn State?
I don't know. I mean, are you going to watch 3/4 of Tyler Warren playing quarterback? Is that what it is?
No, that's not what it's going to be. I mean, they're going to go to the freshman, but it's a very strange situation. And that would change the math on this considerably. Like, if Pribula is there, you're not even worried about it. Like, you kind of know what the offense is going to look like. And it's different. It's a different offense, but is Ethan Gronkmeyer coming in? I think that's who comes in, right?
Yeah. And he was a pretty highly rated recruit out of Ohio. Kind of like it was a little bit of the same type of path as Drew Aller to get to Penn State. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like, is that what you want to be doing? It's very fascinating.
Welcome to the show, kid. Like, golly.
Yeah. This Pribula situation is just fascinating to me. I don't know, man.
It is because they were one of the ones. Now, SMU is one of the other ones that, look, if something happens, you got a backup quarterback who can just hop in and you're good to go. Like SMU, and that's the thing. If something happens to Kevin Jennings in this game, we've seen Preston Stone start 16 games for SMU. He's 13-3 as a starter. Like, we know what he can do.
And there's just something about this game, Andy, too. And not just, I mean, in college football, where your weaknesses, or if you roll the dice on something, that it has a funny way of popping up on you. Doesn't it always seem it kind of works out that way? Of like, okay, we're going into a game where, this is a deficiency, and then all of a sudden here we are, like, having to face that head on national television with the whole country watching. Like, that happens a lot in college football. Now, again, nothing but hope and well wishes for Drew Aller to remain healthy and to continue on in his campaign the way
that's
that we
the thing.
all want.
If Drew Aller looks like he did against Oregon, Penn State's winning and covering here. Let's be real here.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like there's some risk here involved here that isn't necessarily just who do you think is better. But I also think like when we get to the other games, like what should happen or what could happen just kind of depends on circumstances of a few things. And it's kind of hard to predict what the circumstance is going to be when the game starts. But like my gut feeling here is that Penn State controls this football game and wins by 10 at home.
I think so too. I think as long as Aller's healthy, that they're going to be able to cover this spread. That defense is pretty hellacious. You know, you've got Abdul Carter coming after the quarterback, and they are going to punish mistakes. So SMU has to be almost perfect here. And we saw in the ACC championship game where the moment looked a little too big for them. Now, maybe they've gotten over that. And I like, if I'm Rhett Lashley, I am saying to this team, you've already experienced that. You belong here. Don't worry about it. Go out there, play fast and loose. Like, let's not be tight going into this game, because if they are tight, they're going to lose. They cannot start the way they started against Clemson because this team's too good for that. So
the temperature in State College on Saturday is a high of 25 and a low of 10 degrees with winds of 10 to 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, the team that can control the game on the ground. Like this, that sounds like a Tyler Warren day to me. That sounds like you get the ball to Tyler Warren however you can.
B1G, Andy. B1G.
Can you imagine trying to tackle Tyler Warren in the cold? Like, tackling him in perfect conditions sounds awful to me, but tackling him in the cold sounds terrible. Oh, yeah, give me Penn State to cover. All right, before we go to Clemson and Texas, we got a new sponsor alert. MasterClass. Learn from the best to become your best. And we have a message about one of their new classes, which sounds awesome.
You don't need to know everything there is to know about sports in order to win at sports betting.
Stop betting blind. Learn how to beat the odds from our team of sharps.
As long as there have been sports, there have been people betting on them.
This is not luck. It's good strategy, and we're going to show you how.
If you're going to get emotional, don't bet against your home team.
Never overbet your bankroll. You need to be comfortable with the amount that you bet.
An edge is simply having an advantage over the sportsbook.
You might find 16 sports books that have the Boston Celtics at 12-1 to win the championship. And then there might be one that's offering 16-1. They may have just made a mistake.
Find the best price. It can't be simpler.
Find those easy edges and then turn them into profits. The average bettor likes to bet on the favorites and the overs because they like to see things happen.
Betting against things happening is where there's historically been a lot more value.
Learn about
bankroll management, prop bets,
the difference between the point spread and the money line,
top-down betting,
handicapping.
Money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
I'm Rob Pizzola,
Nick Kostos,
Captain Jack Andrews,
Gina Fiore,
Rufus Peabody.
I'm Joe Fortenbaugh, and this is MasterClass.
Is MasterClass, and
I just learned all the things I do wrong all the time. Thank you.
Exactly. And you took their poker class, right?
Yeah, I took a class from Daniel Negreanu like 3 years ago because I don't know if there's. Listen, guys, when I say I am a capital D degenerate like this, it's not just on sports, guys. Like, I mean, I was, $200 deep trying to get a teddy bear at the arcade the other day. But I play poker a lot in the off season, and I don't know if you're in the Texas area, but I drive up to Choctaw all the time to play in the off season at night. Like, my wife goes to bed early and I'll drive up an hour, play all night, and then come home. So like when you play poker at like the casual level that I play, like 1, 2, 2, 5, no limit, like you're playing against other people like yourself. But when you get into big environments, and I've played in some bigger games in Vegas with people who are really, really good, like the way that they think, the way that they perceive the game is on such a higher level that like I was just fascinated by, what they're doing from a processing standpoint during the game. So I just like wanted to learn. So I took the Daniel Negreanu class just to hear like how he thinks and how he views the sport or the game. And it was one of the most fascinating things ever. And it actually helped me a lot, like processing during when I'm playing. Cause like I go and I try to make $100 an hour. He's playing in these high stake games, but you learn a lot from the high stake players because that they're the more advanced. They're math geniuses. They teach you how to view things, and it was really enlightening.
And it's not just poker and sports betting. MasterClass has classes that can help you in every aspect of your life. It is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 plus the world's best. And for just $10 a month, an annual membership with MasterClass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. They always have good deals during the holidays. Visit masterclass.com/on3 for up to 50% off. So it's masterclass.com/on3, up to 50% off. Go for it. Learn from the best to be your best. Ari, let us go to Austin, Texas. This Clemson-Texas game is, I feel like it's either the most shocking result of the first round or it is a 40-15 Texas win. Texas is an 11.5-point favorite in this game. I'm trying, I see a path for Clemson to win it. It probably involves a meltdown by the Texas offense. Is Clemson's defense good enough, though? Because we've seen Georgia's defense do this to Texas's offense. But can Clemson do it?
This is a lot of points. So that's the thing that jumps out to me the most. But let me ask you this way, Andy. Which unit is the most no doubt about it unit coming into the game?
Texas defense.
Right?
100%.
So I have my thoughts and my fears about Texas's offense. I think what we saw against Georgia is who they are. Okay.
Yep.
If you are, I'm seeing in the chat here some oh yeah, Texas by 1,000. It's you think they're going to score 1,000? You think they're going to go score 45 in this game all of a sudden?
But I can see it. Here's my thing, Ari. I can see it playing out similarly to the Clemson-Georgia game at the beginning of the season. Now, I do think Clemson's offense is better than it was at the beginning of the season, but I can see it mostly being played on one side of the field because Texas's defense is so dominant. Even if Texas's offense is, because remember, Georgia's offense was not very good in the first half of that game. Clemson just got worn out because they had to keep defending their own territory over and over again.
Yeah. So I also could see a game 20-6. Where, Texas's offense is what it is. They score just enough because they're not going to get shut out, right? They're going to, even against Georgia, what do they score?
No, they have playmakers. They're going to score. The only thing I worry about, and this is where I see the path to Clemson winning, is if you, we were at the Texas and Texas A&M game. 2 really bad turnovers in the second half, and they get a punt blocked in their own territory. Now, their defense stood up. But you can't do that over and over again and expect the defense to come through every single time.
Yeah, because but as much as we want to talk negatively about Texas's offense, Clemson has also shown spurts, not just this year, the last few years of offensive inefficiency for long periods of time. The Louisville game, for instance, this year was not a pretty offensive performance. Right. But that said, Cade Klubnik is probably playing its best football right now, and is Quinn Ewers playing his best football right now, which goes back to the saucy take that I gave you on the show a few weeks ago, which was, I think it's possible that Texas wins this game ugly, and then there's a different quarterback starting for them in the second round. I think that's on the table here. So, I like Texas in this game because I don't think that Clemson's going to score a bunch. I think
right.
But I also like the under because I don't think Texas is going to score a bunch. I think this game could be 27-13 or something.
Yeah, 51.5 feels high for this. Because even if Texas dominates, the way Texas would dominate, a dominant win for Texas probably is a 30-6 game, which would be 15 points under the total.
Right. I don't see Texas winning this game 44-24. You know what I mean? Somebody in the chat says 24-10. I think that is on the table. An 11.5 points seems like a lot to lay when your offense is struggling or isn't as explosive as it should be. But if your defense doesn't allow the other team to score much, you don't have to score that much to cover that spread. So I think that a lot of people are going to put their foot in the 11.5 point bear trap. And I think they're going to come up short. I think that Texas is going to cover by playing a great defensive performance and having scored just enough to get past the spread here.
So if we're talking, so there's 8 teams playing in the playoff this weekend. There's 4 games, 8 teams. Offenses and defense, 16 units. Is the Texas defense the most trustworthy of those 16? I think it is.
Probably. Yeah.
That's the one. Like, what game has Texas given up a ton of points in? What game has Texas's defense looked shaky in?
Right.
I don't think I've
and
seen
also
it yet.
too, if you want to like question Texas's schedule, like they're not playing a juggernaut. Like, let's not mistake what Clemson is, right? Like, Clemson has not been very good this year. They've been good by the standard of 85% of the sport, but they have not been like elite good. And they're playing against a team that we've perceived at times this year to be one of the elite good super teams, right? So like my brain hasn't just like gone from like, oh, Clemson stinks to like, wow, they're going to go beat Texas on the road. Like, I'm not there yet. But I also am not 100% bought in on Texas's offensive prowess. So I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think it might be a lot like the Georgia Clemson game, but I don't think that the scoring is going to go off the rails like it did in that game.
It's going to be. I trust that defense, and that's where I'm going with this pick. I'm going to take Texas to cover because I don't think they're going to let Clemson score very much. Sailor Joe points out in the chat, you guys said you were going to talk about the Quinn Ewers draft versus portal thing. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it.
What do we think happens?
My father texted me over the weekend and said, I'm hearing that Quinn Ewers is thinking about going to the Ohio State. I'm like, Dad, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know how that would work. Ohio State has too many quarterbacks.
They have a lot that they're planning on using next year. So,
but I do think that like Quinn Ewers to the Big Ten is an interesting discussion, because if he's not ready for the NFL, I don't know if he has shown enough or if it's even a tenable situation for him to return to Texas next year, right? Like, even if he wanted to.
Yeah, they had a plan, and the plan was that he was heading to the NFL after this year. Arch was going to take over. It'll be a situation. It'd kind of be a situation like kind of the original quarterback portal situations, like one that I can recall. Remember, NC State had Mike Glennon and Russell Wilson, and this is a time when you had to be a grad transfer to transfer and play right away. But it happened that they both graduated, and so Tom O'Brien had to pick one, and he picked Glennon, and Russell Wilson went to Wisconsin. Like, this is a situation where if Quinn Ewers decides not to go to the NFL, you got to pick a quarterback. And I also think
too, the question is that like, what is Quinn Ewers' actual draft stock right now? Because I have seen mock drafts throughout the years of him like going to Cleveland at number 9 or whatever. Like, obviously the numbers have changed, but is he a top 10 pick? Because here's the thing about Quinn Ewers that you have to acknowledge. He and his team, whoever is behind him, have done an incredible job in his marketability. He is making a shit ton of money in college. So I don't know if going to the league is best for his income right now either, if he's not a first-round pick. Like, if he can expand his NIL revenue-sharing income for another year and then maybe play himself back into the first or second round, then that makes sense to me. Or declaring for the NFL draft, even if he isn't a first-round pick, because he knows where he stands in Texas. That also makes sense. So I don't know, but I just know he's not going to be the starting quarterback at Texas a year from now. So like, I don't know.
Dane Brugler from The Athletic is probably the guy, the draft analyst I trust the most. And so he put out his big board recently and he updated it. So this is his top 50. He's only got 4 quarterbacks in it. And the highest is number 16. He's got Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, and Garrett Nussmeier. Like, those are the ones he feels like if they were in the draft would be chosen the highest. So Ewers not being there. And obviously, if quarterbacks are going to go higher than the number that you put next to their name on the hot board, on the big board. But if you don't think you're going to be a first-round draft pick and you might not be a second-round draft pick, if you're Quinn Ewers, especially with the amount of money he's made in college, you stay and find a way to do it.
Yeah, and if you
somewhere
like
else
if you type in mock draft into Google, like you can come up with a bunch of just quick drafts. Some of them are reliable, some of them are more exercises, but I just went through 4 while you were talking, and none of them had Quinn Ewers in the first round. So again, they might have just been some fan doing it. I don't know, but like I don't know if that's on the table right now. So if it's not on the table,
maybe he'll
right
be
now,
Bill Belichick's quarterback. He needs one.
would be interesting.
Bill Belichick was recruiting this weekend. Bryce
It's like
Baker, who's committed to North Carolina.
It's so difficult with the Quinn Ewers situation is that he's done a shit ton for Texas. Like Texas is not the same place it was, and I wrote this a month ago that it is now when he took over. Like you remember what Texas was when he went there, and now what it is. Like he has left Texas in a better spot. Now part of that too, obviously, you can't overlook what Sarkisian has done from a talent acquisition aspect and like actually getting players that are being developed for the NFL draft. Because it gets like, remember, like for Texas, 20 years, they were recruiting top 5 classes and nobody was getting drafted. I think they went from between, I think Bijan Robinson and Vince Young were the 2 players bookended on first round offensive draft picks, which is like, blows your mind. Like when you think about how many good players have played at Texas over the years, to go 15, 20 years or however long it was been between 2 first round picks is a absolute straight line between why Texas stinks because they haven't been able to develop. So they've done a lot of
now they can, and now you have guys like Tavondre Sweat,
right?
Who were who was actually for Texas not a big time recruit, but they developed him into a really good player. He's in the NFL now, picking up fumbles, carrying them like a running back. Like it's they're producing NFL players now at Texas.
But Ewers,
and that's
Ewers
the biggest
would
difference.
Be an attractive portal entry though, right? Like people would want him.
Oh, sure. He's played a ton of games. He's faced elite competition. He's been good in big games. Like, yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens. Like this game could tell us a lot because your hot take, if your saucy take came true, then we'd probably have some answers on that.
I mean, my saucy take just look at the conversation we just had. Like it might not come true, but like it's already kind of true.
Right. Exactly. But we still think Texas covers, both of us, in this game. So
yeah, but not because we think they're going to turn it into a laser show.
No, because of their defense. Because of their defense. All right, let's talk about Game Time. If you want tickets to any of these college football playoff games that are happening this weekend, you can get them on Game Time. And for some surprisingly good deals, you can get into Penn State like around $100 if you want to watch that game. The 300,000+ seat stadiums that are hosting games, relatively reasonable prices for games this weekend. The one that's still pretty expensive but has come down quite a bit, it's actually feel like it's been cut in half in about a week, is the Indiana Notre Dame game. That's still a tough ticket. It's still in the $500 a seat range, but it was quadruple digits for most of the seats as of a week ago. So keep looking at Game Time. I'll give you an example. I've told you about when I got tickets for my wife and daughter to see Taylor Swift. We were watching him. We weren't going to buy him. We watched him over the course of several days before the show, woke up the morning of the show, and they had dropped dramatically. So you hit that GT Picks button in the Game Time app. It'll give you the best deals relative to the market of all the seats that are on the market. So if you're trying to figure this out last minute, like if you want to go to the Tennessee-Ohio State game in Columbus, or you want to go to the Clemson-Texas game, you may want to hold a little bit. Just keep checking Game Time over and over. Watch the trends. If it starts to go up, grab one before it goes up. If it starts to go down, see if it'll go down a little bit. But it is it's a very fluid market right now. But there are tickets available for all of these games. There are really good seats available for all these games on Game Time. If you use the code Staples, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Use the code Staples, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. They're all there. You want to go to one of these games, you can go. There are tickets. And in fact, there are reasonably priced tickets for quite a few of them. The one game, Ari, where it's still pretty tough to get in is Indiana Notre Dame. They are pumped about this game in the South Bend. It's going to be very exciting. You and I are going to be there.
Electric.
It's going to be awesome. This is a place that's been clamoring for a game like this for a long time. Notre Dame hasn't won a game like this in a long time, like 1995, because they didn't win a BCS bowl. They didn't win a New Year's Six bowl when they were playing, when there was a 14 playoff. They didn't win any of the semifinals in the 14 playoff. This is a fan base that is starved to win a game like this. And I have a clip here from Marcus Freeman's press conference on Sunday. And it's interesting because with Notre Dame, it always seems to come back to the Northern Illinois game. So let's hear what Marcus Freeman has said recently about what that game did for them, to them, and if he's thinking about it now.
This isn't an Indiana-related question, but I think it was either after the Northern Illinois game or the Monday after Pete Sampson asked you whether you thought that your program had evolved beyond a performance like that. And at the time you said yes. I just wonder what your thought process has been over the last 10 games as far as, because you preach preparation so strongly with your team. I mean, do you live in perpetual prevention of upset alert at this point moving forward?
I mean, I would be lying if I say I don't think about, that loss or being upset. Fear is a motivator. It is what it is. A lot of people are motivated by fear or greed. And there's times that I have to remind myself, what's the result of not preparing the right way? But sometimes it takes the performance that we had versus NIU to go back and say, okay, hold on. What lessons do we have to learn? You can't, if you knew exactly what it took, the perfect formula, you would correct it right when it's not right. But sometimes it takes going back and saying, okay, where didn't we prepare the right way? And that's after a win too. There's situations that happen in a win that you got to go back and say, okay, we didn't perform the way we needed to in this situation. Third down offense, third down defense, first down offense, whatever the situation may be, special teams. Hold on, is our preparation, is this something that's showing up in practice? If it's not, okay, was this a schematic thing that we weren't ready for? And I think that's the mindset I have. I still believe in preparation. I choose to believe that is the number one indicator that gives your program a chance to have success on Saturday.
Now, we've talked about this a bunch. That Marcus Freeman is still a young head coach, is still early in his journey as a head coach. And that's the sort of thing you have to take lessons from to make sure it never happens again. Now, I don't think you can turn on the Indiana tape from this year and not be impressed. So I don't think Notre Dame's going to look at this and be like, it's just Indiana. We're going to roll over these guys. But Notre Dame probably has better players at most positions than Indiana. Like, they should win this game. How do you prepare properly for this?
So after the Ohio State-Indiana game, I wrote a column about how Indiana's playoff candidacy cannot be determined on how close they play a team that at the time I perceived to be one of the best in the country. And now I'm thinking about it, and I'm wondering, where do you put Notre Dame on the pantheon of, well, I'm going to say it right now. Like, people are asking me, who do you like in the playoff? And Notre Dame is 14-1 to win it all. And I think that those are really tasty odds. Like,
it's a good price.
It's a good price. But everybody just rolls their eyes like, oh, Notre Dame. Oh, yeah, right. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, okay. I think that there's this perception from the casual fan or just from the fan in general that Notre Dame lost to NIU and that they stink. But I think that Notre Dame is as close to Ohio State, at least from a defensive standpoint, as just about anybody else outside of Texas in college football this year. And I'm wondering if you take away Indiana's performance from Ohio State and bring it to this one. Like, is Notre Dame and Ohio State in your mind? And do you think that Indiana, though very good this year, is going to be susceptible to succumbing to just a more talented team? Because we have one sample size, one game of Indiana playing against a team that we think could win the national title. And they did not show up. Now, they were also
of their 11 wins, what was the toughest win to get? Michigan, when they were playing against a team with elite defensive talent. And this is the time to point out that Howard Cross, the third, the nose tackle for Notre Dame, is going to be back this week. He hasn't played since the Florida State game. So that Cross and Riley Mills together, pretty formidable combo up the middle. Now they've seen more. They've seen Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, so they've seen this at Indiana. But this Notre Dame defense is nasty.
So, yeah, I'm having a hard time with that because it's like, do I think Indiana's a really good football team? Yes. Do I think that Indiana deserves to be in the playoff? Yes. Do I question whether or not they're equipped in year one of the Kurt Cignetti era to compete against a team that has really good players everywhere? I'm doubtful of that.
Yeah, this is the tricky part because I believe in Cignetti. I believe that he will have this team ready. I believe he'll have them with the proper mindset. They will be exactly where they need to be. The game plan will be sound. Schematically, they'll do everything they can to attack the weakest parts of Notre Dame's team, like all of it. That said, if Notre Dame prepares properly and comes in with the correct mindset, they can just out-talent them. Like
here's the difference.
We watched that Army Navy game between two really good teams. Really good teams. Like Navy was 9-3, Army was 10-2. Notre Dame crushed those teams because they had better players at the line of scrimmage. That's going to be the same situation here. Indiana's going to have to be perfect.
Here's the difference. Ohio State's rushing defense is number 7 nationally. Notre Dame's is number 51. So if you can find a way to run the football effectively, if you're Indiana, you might be able to put yourself in a much better position to compete in this game.
Which Indiana's had games where they've been effective on the ground.
Yeah. 2 scores is a tough thing to lay, but I think I'm going to lay it, Andy. I think Notre Dame can win this game by 10.
I will go back to what I just said. I trust Kurt Cignetti to have his team prepared, have the correct mindset, be in the right places, and have the right scheme. So I'm going to take Indiana to cover. I still think Notre Dame's probably going to win the game. You're going to give me 7.5 points, though. Yeah. I think Indiana is going to come prepared for this thing as well as they possibly can be.
You know, and you play this is the biggest game in Indiana history game. This is a really big game for Notre Dame, too. Really,
yeah, this is huge for Notre Dame.
So, in terms of motivation, I don't know that I would give the edge to either side on that. Like, I think they're both hungry. So, yeah.
Okay, that's the other part. I'm glad you mentioned that because I kind of came in with that. I do want to point this out. I don't think Notre Dame is going to come in thinking this is Northern Illinois. I also don't think Notre Dame's looking ahead to Georgia. Like, none of that. They have not won a game like this since the 90s. This would be a huge win. Like, and there's no, it was Indiana. Like, no. If you win this game, it's a huge win. And like I said, I think Indiana will come with as good a game plan as you could possibly have to attack Notre Dame. Whether that's good enough, we're going to find out. But I at this point, I feel like we can trust Kurt Cignetti to do that. So Ari will take Notre Dame to cover. I will take Indiana to cover. I think we both think Notre Dame advances after this game.
I don't know if you've noticed this, Andy, but we have a hive of Tennessee fans in here.
Oh boy, it's time. It's time. First, though, we're going to tell you about PrizePicks. Best daily fantasy game in America. Download the app. Use the code Staples. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. They've already started to populate the board for this weekend's college football playoff games. I'm looking at the rushing yard board for the Ohio State-Tennessee game. Will Howard, 10.5, more or less. We've fallen into that particular bear trap before, Ari. Because Will Howard does not usually wind up running for a bunch. Nico's is 19.5. That's a tricky one, too, because Nico's one of those guys that can get that all in one play, and then you just sort of count back sacks to see if you end up with the more than. So that's a tricky square as well. Dylan Sampson, though, I think this may be the key to the game here. 93.5 rushing yards, more or less. When you're playing PrizePicks, you pick a square. You go as few as 2 squares. You can pick more squares if you want. The more squares you pick, the higher the potential payout. That Dylan Sampson, 93.5 rushing yards. Whoo, boy, if he goes more than that, I think we may be talking about a Tennessee victory in this game. But if Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are running the ball very well, then it may be Ohio State winning the game. But could play it on PrizePicks. Download the app. Use the code Staples. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. Ari, let us talk Tennessee at Ohio State. I mentioned when we did the Game Time ad, the prices for this are very reasonable. Tennessee fans are highly motivated and have been waiting for a game like this for a long time. Ohio State fans, your athletic director, Ross Bjork, mentioned this the other day. I will point this out again. Like, you better buy these suckers up or there's going to be a lot of orange in that stadium.
Well, isn't that like a thing? Like, isn't that like what people are saying, that Tennessee is buying all the tickets on
They're
purpose?
trying. Like, they were trying to use AI. I saw on Twitter people talking about themselves trying to use AI generated photos of themselves in Ohio State gear to get on the Ohio State ticket buying website.
Just buy them on Game Time. They're not that expensive, right?
Well, exactly. Especially for the Tennessee fans. Again, there's a lot of Tennessee fans. They're highly motivated. I'm telling you, Ohio State fans, you may need to protect your stadium here.
Well, here's the thing. Covering Ohio State for 10 years, I went to every Ohio State football game for a decade. And there have been a lot of instances of Ohio State doing the OHIO chant in opposing stadiums in the fourth quarter when the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like
100%.
I've seen that a lot in my life. I have never seen Ohio Stadium taken over by another team.
No,
now, there have been fans celebrating at the end when they've lost games, but I've never
right, but
seen
it's that one little corner where that's their section and that's it. Yeah.
I have not seen opposing fan base come in and do that. So I know that morale is really down in Columbus. And I think there is at least semi-large segment of fans that are out on Ryan Day and won't buy tickets as long as he's the coach there anymore. But I also am doubtful that it's going to be a sea of orange on Saturday. So I don't know what your thought on that is, but if it is, that would be incredible. I've never seen anything like that.
I can't imagine it. I just can't. This because Ohio State and Tennessee's fan bases are very similar. Ohio State's is just bigger. As big as Tennessee's fan base is, Ohio State is bigger. And in terms of passion, I'd say they're probably pretty close, and they're both kind of at the top. So
Go Vols in here says he's estimating that 30% of the stadium will be Tennessee.
That would be incredible. I cannot imagine. I just can't imagine it. I really
30% would be high. I think if Tennessee has the best possible turnout, 25% would be an incredible show. I don't know. But also, if Tennessee is successful in taking over their stadium, then that is a really bad look for Ryan Day too, because you don't want that if you're the athletic director. So here's the question about the game. Who's a better team?
They both have their flaws, and that's what I keep coming back to. Ohio State probably player for player has the better roster, but who has the better running game? This is the question I've asked myself. Because we talk about the weather. We're talking about the weather affecting the game, and it's supposed to be 15 degrees at game time. And I pointed out that it snowed in Knoxville last week, and it gets cold in Knoxville too. But it's more of a stylistic thing where the weather matters. Which team do you trust to run the ball better? I think that might be Tennessee for me.
I don't trust Ohio State to do anything.
That's scary when you talk about a roster like that.
How could you?
After the Michigan game, it's very hard.
I get accused of being a homer for Ohio State all the time because I'm very complimentary of their players because they have really good players. Ohio State has shown me nothing this year that makes me think I should lay two.
Okay, all right. Here we go. Let me. I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate or if I'm talking myself into this. other than the Michigan game, which you and I have said was clearly some mental blocked, like rent-free in the head people going against their own best interest stylistically to try to beat Michigan in a way that I guess would make you seem more manly or something. I don't know.
You're going galaxy brain here. Yeah, I love it.
No, but let's think about this. They played Oregon to a 1-point game on the road. They beat Penn State on the road.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not trying to beat somebody at their own game, which is not their style, which is what they did against Michigan, and they just play their style, they're still better than almost everybody.
Are they better than Tennessee? That's who they're playing.
Which Tennessee? Which Tennessee? Tennessee that went to Arkansas? Tennessee that played Alabama? Which Tennessee are we talking about? Tennessee that went to Georgia?
So here's the thing about this
the Tennessee that went to Georgia will lose this game.
Yeah. I think Ohio State could cover the spread if they play really well and they're motivated, they draw up a good game plan, and they throw the ball to their receivers. I'm saying that I don't trust them to do that.
I don't either.
Why would I?
I don't trust Tennessee.
Yeah.
We've seen Nico overthrow receivers. We've seen Nico throw accurately and the receivers drop the ball. Then we saw the Vanderbilt game where that's what it looks like when it actually all works. But we haven't seen it all work that much.
So anybody who has followed my coverage this year, especially written, have been pretty high on Tennessee's ceiling, right? If Nico, who has a long time to continue to develop into the player, plays well, they are fine. Okay. Now, the one thing that I think you have to look statistically is that Tennessee statistically has one of the worst offenses in the playoff. So there is a lot of onus on Nico taking the next step and them hitting some balls downfield, which they've struggled to do this year. But you have one of the best running backs in college football on your team. You're going to run the ball. Ohio State's offensive line is not great now.
This is the part. I'm glad you brought this up because this is
really
the part.
Good.
This is the part where it gets interesting. Ohio State offensive line versus Tennessee D line. Now, Tennessee does not have anybody up the middle on the level of Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant. They do on the edge with James Pierce, but their talent up the middle is probably deeper than almost any team in the country. Like there are 4 NFL defensive tackles that they rotate through.
I just don't know how you can lay 2 scores when you have a team's weakness going up against the team's strength in the most critical spot in the game. Now, here's the question that we haven't mentioned either. Is Ohio State just mentally broken right now? Like, I think that there is a level of that where, 2 years ago, Ohio State lost to Michigan and they played Georgia really well. And everybody is kind of pointing back to that. But this one feels different because Ohio State lost to Michigan 2 years ago, was out of the playoff and lost to a good Michigan team and was hurt that they lost, but got themselves back up off the mat when they unexpectedly still got into the playoff and were playing with an extra life that they didn't know they had. This year, Ohio State knew it was going to the playoff and got beaten by a bad team at home. I don't care what their uniforms are. They played like ass. Their game plan was ass. And everything about that game was a complete and utter failure, both from a performance standpoint and a coaching standpoint. So now you're going to tell me that they have 3 weeks to sulk in that and they're going to be motivated by that and they're going to be great when
now,
everything
I've seen it
that
once
Ohio
before,
State
and so
has,
have you, but it was a different head coach.
We saw it in a different circumstance.
No, 2015, they lose to Michigan State. They make some changes because Zeke Elliott pops off, and they're like, "Oh, maybe we should get the play in a little faster."
Oh,
and
you're
then
talking
they
about the Notre Dame
Michigan
game?
the next week. No, they lost
Michigan,
Michigan State, destroyed Michigan.
They beat Notre Dame by 100 in the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, but I don't know. So, let me ask you it this way then. Do you have faith in Ryan Day to emotionally have his team ready? And do you believe in Ryan Day to be prepared for this?
Not after the Michigan game. He's going to have to prove it.
I'm taking the points.
I am taking
and
the
I think
points
Tennessee
as well.
can win outright. Yeah.
I think Tennessee can win outright, but I feel comfortable getting more than a touchdown either way.
And if Tennessee wins, they have to plant a flag.
I think there's going to be a ring of state troop. It's not illegal yet, right? They didn't pass the bill, so I'm not sure how the legislative calendar works in Ohio.
I just
but I'm
don't
pretty
want
sure
anybody to catch a
law.
felony for yeah. So someone goes, "Do you really think that Ohio State players are sulking?" I don't think that like Jeremiah Smith is crying in his dorm room every night. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's an emotional like hangover.
I'm not worried about the players on that front.
And
really
it's also not just a player thing. It's the coaches and their ability to pick themselves up and design an offense. And then on top of it, they have personnel deficiencies that Tennessee can exploit. So it seems like like Ohio State laying 7.5 seems like a lot of points. We'll see if I'm wrong, but never once like had that like gut feeling like, oh yeah, go get Ohio State. The Ohio State that played Georgia 2 years ago is going to show up. It's like that team had a really good offensive line too, and this team has some deficiencies on that front that can torpedo their entire offense. So we'll see how it goes. But Tennessee has been very proud on Twitter the last few weeks. I don't know if you've seen Vol Nation and all the graphics that they've been posting. Very funny. That one that River showed me when we were in Nashville last week was hilarious, of the uniform reveal that Tennessee had, and it was just Michigan's uniform. Like, they have been very creative and very fun. They're very confident.
They should be.
Put up or shut up time now, I guess.
They've been waiting for this for a long time. Ohio State is coming off a just gutting loss. This is Ohio State's chance to get up off the mat. This is Tennessee's chance to prove they belong. This is the most fun matchup of this college football playoff so far.
But we've been saying all year that Tennessee has it if they have the pieces, if they put it together to make a run, right?
Yep. We're going to find out. We're going to find out what happens. We're going to be there. Ari, I cannot wait for this weekend. We're going to be in South Bend on Friday night. We're going to be in Columbus on Saturday night. These games are going to be awesome, but they are not the only games going on this week. We have transfer portal news. We have coaching news. We have other bowl games. We got other bowl games. Like the Frisco Bowl is Tuesday. Let's do some bonus picks tomorrow on some of these other bowl games that are this week. And also, let's talk transfer portal. We had some discussions that we had to cut short today because we had to get to the picks. We'll have probably some James Franklin comments on Beau Pribula, so we can get back into that, delve a little more into what happened there. This is going to be a very, very interesting week. We'll talk to you tomorrow.